I, 28, F, came home from a 2-week vacation to find everything I owned sitting on the curb. Not just a few boxes. My bed, my dresser, my grandmother's rocking chair, all of it was lined up on the wet pavement like a sad, forgotten parade. The apartment I had shared with my boyfriend, Mark, 30 M, for 3 years was empty. The key I had in my hand no longer worked in the lock. My first thought was that we had been evicted. My stomach twisted into a cold, hard knot. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to call him. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Voicemail. A wave of panic washed over me, so strong it made me dizzy. I leaned against the brick wall of the building, taking deep breaths, trying to fight back the tears that were burning the back of my eyes. The vacation had been for my sister's wedding. It was a beautiful, happy time. Mark was supposed to come with me, but he had canceled at the last minute. He said a huge project came up at work, one that he absolutely could not miss. I was disappointed, but I understood. His career was important to him. He had been so convincing, so apologetic. He had called me every night, telling me how much he missed me, how he was just working and sleeping, counting the days until I came back. He had sounded so genuine. He had sounded like the man I loved. Now, standing on a damp sidewalk surrounded by the wreckage of my life, I wasn't sure who that man was at all. I saw a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, from down the hall, peeking out her window. She saw me, and her eyes widened with pity. She quickly pulled her curtains shut. The shame was a physical thing, a hot flush that spread across my face and down my neck. Everyone on this street could see my life, discarded like trash. I had to do something. I couldn't just stand here. I called my best friend, Sarah. She answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful.
Hey,
How was the flight?
are you home yet? She asked.
My voice broke when I tried to answer. Sarah, something is wrong. I finally managed to say, the words thick with unshed tears. What is it? What happened? She asked, her tone instantly changing to one of concern. All my stuff. It's on the street, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Mark is gone. The lock is changed. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end of the line. Then she said, I'm on my way. Don't move.
Just stay right there.
I'll be there in 15 minutes. Hanging up the phone, I felt a tiny sliver of relief. I wasn't alone. I looked at my belongings again. My favorite reading lamp was on its side, the shade dented. A box of my books had tipped over, the pages exposed to the damp air. It felt so personal, so cruel. This wasn't an eviction. An eviction comes with notices, with warnings. This was a deliberate act. He had waited until I was 1,000 miles away, and then he had erased me from his life. He had thrown me away as easily as he had thrown away my things. I walked over to my grandmother's rocking chair. It was the one piece of furniture that meant the most to me. She had rocked me to sleep in it when I was a baby. After she passed away, it was the one thing I wanted from her house. I ran my hand over the smooth, worn wood. A light rain began to fall, and the drops felt like tears on my skin. I had to get it out of the rain. I tried to drag it under the small awning of the building entrance, but it was heavy and awkward. My arms ached with the effort.
My whole body ached.
Sarah's car screeched to a halt beside the curb. She jumped out, her face a mask of shock and anger. She didn't say anything at first. She just walked through the mess, her eyes taking in every detail. She touched the mattress, the pile of my clothes that had been haphazardly thrown into a cardboard box, the framed photos of me and Mark that were now lying face down on the pavement. Finally, she turned to me. He is a monster, she said, her voice low and furious. A complete and utter monster. I just nodded, unable to speak. The lump in my throat was too big. Okay, she said, shifting into practical mode. First things first. We need to get this stuff somewhere dry. My garage. We can put it all in my garage for now.
How?
I asked. My mind felt fuzzy, unable to think clearly. We can't fit a bed in your car. We'll rent a truck, she said immediately. A U-Haul. We'll get the biggest one they have, and we will load every single thing into it. Her certainty was a lifeline. It was something to hold on to in the swirling chaos of my emotions. We stood there for a moment, the rain getting a little heavier, and then a new feeling began to push through the shock and the grief. It was anger, a cold, hard anger that started in my belly and spread through my veins. He thought he could just throw me away. He thought he could do this to me and get away with it. He was wrong. "No," I said, my voice suddenly clear and steady. "We're not taking it to your garage." Sarah looked at me, confused. "What do you mean? We can't leave it here." "I know where we're taking it," I said. The anger was solidifying into a plan, a purpose. "We're going to deliver it to him." Sarah's eyes widened. "To him? But you don't even know where he is." "I'll find him," I said, a grim determination settling over me. "I will find him. And then I'm going to return his things." I looked around at the furniture. My furniture. He had left his things too. The ugly leather couch he loved. The giant television. The coffee table he had insisted on buying. It seemed he had only thrown out what was mine, or what was ours together. But a closer look revealed his things were mixed in two. It was as if he had just emptied the entire apartment. It made no sense. Why would he throw away his own expensive electronics? "Okay," Sarah said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I like this plan. I like this plan a lot. Let's go get that truck." The first step was figuring out where he had gone. My calls still went to voicemail. I sent him a text message. "Mark, where are you? All of our stuff is on the curb." Call me immediately. I knew he wouldn't, but I had to try. I needed to document that I had attempted to contact him. While Sarah drove us to the U-Haul rental place, I started my investigation. I logged into our shared phone plan account. I had set it up years ago, so my login still worked. I checked his call history. There were dozens of calls over the past 2 weeks to a number I didn't recognize. Most of them were late at night after he would have gotten off the phone with me. My heart sank.
It was so obvious now.
He wasn't working late. He was with someone else. I tried to log into his social media, but he had changed the passwords. He had also blocked me. The speed and efficiency of it all was chilling. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was a calculated plan. He had been planning this for weeks, maybe even months. He had smiled and kissed me goodbye at the airport, knowing he was going to do this. The thought made me feel sick. At the U-Haul place, I rented the largest truck they had. The man behind the counter looked at me and Sarah, soaked from the rain, and asked what we were moving. "Just some trash," I said, my voice flat. He raised an eyebrow but didn't ask any more questions. He handed me the keys. The truck was huge and intimidating, but right then, it felt like a chariot of justice. It felt like power. Back at the apartment, the rain had soaked through the boxes. My books were probably ruined. My clothes were damp. The anger burned hotter. Sarah and I started to load the truck. It was grueling work. The mattress was heavy and floppy. The dresser was bulky and awkward. We scraped our knuckles and strained our backs. A few neighbors came out to watch, their faces a mixture of curiosity and pity. No one offered to help. I didn't blame them. It was a bizarre and pathetic scene. As we were struggling with the hideous leather couch, a young man came out of the building. "Do you need a hand with that?" he asked. He looked to be in his early 20s. I didn't recognize him. "Are you new here?" I asked. "Yeah, I just moved into apartment 3B yesterday," he said. Apartment 3B. That was my apartment. My home. "You moved in yesterday?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. He nodded, oblivious. "Yeah, the landlord said the previous tenant had to leave in a hurry. He left all this junk behind. The landlord said if I hauled it to the curb, I could have the first month's rent free." The world tilted on its axis. Mark hadn't just moved out. He had surrendered the apartment. He had made a deal with the landlord to have a stranger, this kid, throw my entire life onto the street in exchange for a discount on rent. He hadn't even done it himself. He had paid someone else to do his dirty work. He had monetized my humiliation. This isn't junk, I said to the young man, my voice shaking with rage. This is my life. His face fell.
Oh, man.
I am so sorry. I had no idea. The landlord, he told me it was abandoned property. It wasn't abandoned, I said, looking him straight in the eye. I was on vacation. He looked horrified.
I'm so sorry.
Is there anything I can do to help? Yes, I said. You can help us load this couch into this truck. He nodded eagerly. With his help, we got the couch and the rest of the heavy items into the U-Haul. He apologized at least a dozen more times. I told him it wasn't his fault. He was just another person Mark had used. With the truck finally loaded, the sidewalk looked bare and empty. It was like I had never lived there at all. Sarah gave me a hug. You are handling this like a warrior, she said. I didn't feel like a warrior. I felt hollowed out, scraped raw. But I also felt a flicker of something else. A steely resolve. He had underestimated me. He thought I would crumble, that I would just disappear. He didn't know me at all. Now I just had to find him. I had that phone number from the phone records. I typed it into a search engine, but nothing came up. I tried a reverse phone lookup app, but it wanted a fee. I paid it without a second thought. The result came back almost instantly. The number belonged to a woman named Tiffany. The app also gave me her address. It was an apartment in a brand new, luxury condominium building downtown. The kind of place Mark had always dreamed of living in. The kind of place we could never have afforded together. I showed the address to Sarah. That's it, I said. That's where he is. Are you sure? She asked. I'm positive, I said. It all makes sense now. The new girlfriend, the fancy new life. He was building this behind my back the whole time. Sarah put her hand on my arm. What's the plan then? We just show up and dump it all on his new, perfect lawn. Something like that, I said, starting the engine of the U-Haul. The truck rumbled to life. But I think we can be a little more creative. The drive downtown felt surreal. I was operating on pure adrenaline. I followed the GPS on my phone, navigating the big truck through city traffic. Sarah sat beside me, silent but supportive. She was letting me lead. She knew I needed to be the one in control. For the first time in hours, I felt like I was. We found the condominium building. It was one of those sleek, modern high-rises with a doorman and a fancy lobby. There was no lawn to dump things on. The entrance was all glass and steel. I pulled the U-Haul into the loading zone right in front of the main doors, ignoring the signs that said commercial vehicles only, 15-minute limit. What now? Sarah asked. Now we make a delivery, I said. I got out of the truck and walked into the lobby. The doorman, a stern-looking man in a crisp uniform, stepped in front of me. Can I help you, miss? He asked, looking me up and down. I was still in my travel clothes, damp from the rain, and probably looked like a mess. I have a delivery for Mark Peterson in apartment 1204, I said, trying to sound as official as possible. He looked at my U-Haul parked outside, and then back at me, his expression skeptical. A delivery of what? His furniture, I said sweetly. He seems to have forgotten it. The doorman was not amused. Residents have to book the service elevator for deliveries of this size. There's a procedure. I'm sure there is, I said, my patience wearing thin. But this is a special circumstance. An emergency, you could say. Could you please just call up to his apartment and let him know his belongings have arrived? He hesitated, clearly torn between his duty and the strange, determined woman standing in front of him. I could see him trying to decide if I was a threat. Look, I said, softening my tone. He's my ex-boyfriend. He moved out while I was away and had all of my things and our shared things thrown onto the street. I am just trying to return them to him. I don't want any trouble. I just want to give him what's his. Something in my face, maybe the exhaustion or the raw pain, must have gotten through to him.
He sighed.
What's the name again? Mark Peterson. Apartment 1204-inch. He picked up the phone at his desk and dialed. After a moment, he said, Mr. Peterson? There is a young lady here in the lobby with a delivery for you. She says it's your furniture. He listened for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Yes, sir. I'll let her know." He hung up the phone and looked at me. He says he's not expecting any delivery. He says you must be mistaken.
Of course he did.
My blood ran cold. He was going to pretend he didn't know me. He was going to try to make me look crazy. "He's not mistaken," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Please call him back and tell him that if he doesn't come down here to accept his property, I will start unloading it right here in the lobby." The doorman's eyes widened in alarm. "Miss, you can't do that. I'll have to call security. The police." "Then you should call them," I said. "And while you're at it, you can call the local news. I'm sure they'd be interested in a story about a man who throws his girlfriend's life onto the curb while she's away at her sister's wedding." I was bluffing, but I said it with so much conviction that he paused. He picked up the phone again. This time, his conversation was shorter. He hung up and looked at me with a new, grudging respect. "He's coming down." A few minutes later, the elevator doors opened and Mark walked out. He was not alone. A woman with perfectly styled blonde hair and an expensive-looking dress was clinging to his arm. Tiffany, I presumed. She looked confused. Mark looked furious. When he saw me, his face hardened into a mask of cold indifference. It was a look I had never seen before. It was the face of a stranger. He walked right up to me, stopping just a few feet away. Tiffany hung back, looking nervous. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed, his voice low so only I could hear. "I'm returning your property," I said, my voice loud and clear. I wanted the doorman to hear. I wanted Tiffany to hear. "You left it on the sidewalk." I was just worried it would get ruined in the rain. "This is harassment," he said. "You're making a scene?" "Am I?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "I think the scene was made this morning, when I came home from a 2-week trip to find my bed on the curb. What was I supposed to do, Mark? Just let the city take it." Tiffany stepped forward. "Mark, what is she talking about? Who is this?" Mark shot her a look, a flash of panic in his eyes. "It's no one. She's my crazy ex. She can't accept that it's over." The words hit me like a slap in the face. Crazy. The classic, lazy insult of a man who has been caught. I looked at Tiffany. Her face was a mixture of confusion and dawning suspicion. "He didn't tell you about me?" I asked her, my voice full of mock sympathy. "We lived together for 3 years. Up until this morning, as far as I knew, we were still in love. Did he tell you that he canceled on a trip to my sister's wedding at the last minute because of a work emergency? Or that he called me every single night, telling me he missed me?" Tiffany's perfectly made-up face paled. She looked at Mark, her eyes searching his for an explanation. He just glared at me, his jaw tight. "You need to leave," he said to me.
Now.
"I will," I said. "As soon as you and I unload your things from this truck." "I'm not touching any of that junk," he spat. "It's your problem now. Call Goodwill if you want to get rid of it." "Oh, it's not junk, Mark," I said. "It's your ridiculously expensive leather couch. It's your 70-inch television. It's your collection of video games. And it's my grandmother's rocking chair. You have 2 choices. You can help me unload it into your new, fancy apartment. Or I can start unloading it right here. Your call." He stared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. I stared right back, unflinching. I had nothing left to lose. He was the one with the new life, the new girlfriend, the new image to protect. I held all the cards. I could feel the power shift between us. He was used to being in control. He was not in control now. The doorman was watching us, his arms crossed. A few residents had stopped to see what the commotion was about. Mark was trapped. If he refused, he would look like a heartless jerk in front of his new neighbors and his new girlfriend. If he agreed, he would have to accept the public humiliation of having his old life literally delivered to his doorstep. He finally broke the silence. "Fine," he snarled.
Fine.
"We'll unload it. But we're doing it through the service entrance. And then you're going to leave and never contact me again." "Gladly," I said. He turned to Tiffany. "Go upstairs, honey. I'll handle this." She didn't move. She just stared at him, her arms crossed. "No," she said, her voice surprisingly firm. "I think I'll stay and watch." The look on Mark's face was priceless. He was losing control of everything. The next hour was one of the most satisfying of my life. Under the watchful eye of the doorman, who directed us to the loading dock in the back, Mark and I unloaded the U-Haul. Sarah and Tiffany stood by and watched. Sarah had a smirk on her face the entire time. Tiffany looked like she was witnessing a slow-motion car crash. Mark was silent and sullen, his movements jerky with anger. He grunted and strained with the heavy furniture, his expensive suit getting covered in grime. I worked in a steady, determined silence. Every piece of furniture we moved felt like a small victory. When we got to my grandmother's rocking chair, I stopped him. "I'll take that one," I said. I carefully lifted it out of the truck myself. I wasn't letting him touch it. We piled everything in the service elevator and took it up to his apartment. When the doors opened, I got my first look at his new life. The apartment was beautiful, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a stunning view of the city. It was also filled with brand-new, stylish furniture. My old, worn-out belongings looked completely out of place. It was clear he had never intended for any of it to come with him. He directed me to dump everything in the middle of his pristine living room. We made a mountain of our shared past right on his expensive white rug. When the elevator was empty, I turned to leave. "Wait," Tiffany said. I turned back. She looked at Mark, then at me.
"The rocking chair," she said.
"He told you to leave it, but you kept it." I looked at the chair, which I had placed carefully in a corner, away from the pile of junk. "It was my grandmother's," I said simply. Tiffany nodded slowly. She walked over to the pile of furniture. She picked up a framed photo that had been face down. It was a picture of Mark and me, smiling on a beach. She looked at it for a long moment, then she looked at Mark. He wouldn't meet her eyes. She dropped the photo back on the pile. "Mark," she said, her voice cold, "I think you should give her some money for the furniture. The things that were hers." Mark scoffed. "I'm not giving her anything." "You will," Tiffany said. "It wasn't a request. It was a command. You will pay her for her half of the couch, the bed, the television. Everything. You will write her a check right now. Or we are done." Mark stared at her, his mouth hanging open. He had clearly underestimated her, too. He had probably thought she was just a pretty accessory for his new life. It turned out she had a spine of steel. He looked from her to me, trapped. Finally, defeated, he stalked over to a desk, pulled out a checkbook, and scribbled out a check. He shoved it at me without a word. I took it. It was for a generous amount, more than I would have asked for. I guess he was desperate. "Thank you," I said to Tiffany, not to him. She gave me a small, sad smile. "I'm sorry this happened to you," she said. He told me he had been single for a year. I just nodded. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out of the apartment, leaving Mark standing in the middle of the wreckage of his old life, with the woman he had tried to build his new life on looking at him with nothing but contempt. Sarah met me at the elevator. "That," she said, grinning from ear to ear, "was epic." It was, I agreed. A huge weight had lifted off my shoulders. I felt lighter than I had in years. We returned the U-Haul. On the drive to Sarah's house, where I would be staying for a while, I finally allowed myself to cry. But they weren't tears of sadness or grief. They were tears of relief. Tears of release. I had stood up for myself. I had taken a situation that was meant to break me, and I had turned it into a moment of strength. The next few days were a blur of logistics. I deposited Mark's check. I found a new apartment, a small but sunny place that was all my own. I bought a new bed and a new couch. Sarah helped me move in. My grandmother's rocking chair looked perfect in the corner of my new living room. It was the only piece of my old life that I had kept. It was a reminder not of what I had lost, but of what I had survived. A week later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me. "Hello." It was Mark's sister, Emily. Her voice was hesitant. Clara? It's Emily. Hi, Emily, I said, my guard immediately up. I just wanted to call and say I'm so sorry, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I just found out what Mark did.
My mom told me.
I can't believe it. It's monstrous. It wasn't great, I said, my voice dry. He's a coward, she continued, starting to cry. A selfish, cruel coward. And my mom, she's making excuses for him. She's saying you must have driven him to it. It's making me sick. I wasn't surprised to hear that his mother, Carol, was defending him. She had always thought the sun rose and set with her precious son. She had never liked me, always seeing me as not good enough for him. That sounds like Carol, I said. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in this family is like that, Emily said. I always really liked you, Clara. You were good for him. I don't know what happened to him. He's changed. People don't change that much, Emily, I said quietly. The cruelty was probably always there. I just didn't see it. We talked for a few more minutes. She told me that Tiffany had broken up with him the same day I had made my delivery. She had apparently told him that she couldn't be with someone who was capable of such casual cruelty. He was now living alone in his fancy new apartment, surrounded by a pile of old, ugly furniture that he had to pay to have hauled away. He had called Emily, crying, saying I had ruined his life. The irony was almost funny. He ruined his own life, I told her. All I did was return his property. After I hung up with Emily, I felt a sense of closure. His family, at least the part of it that mattered, knew the truth. His new girlfriend knew the truth. He hadn't gotten away with it. He had faced consequences. Public, humiliating consequences. That night, I sat in my new apartment, in my grandmother's rocking chair, and looked out the window at the city lights. I thought about the past few weeks. The pain of the betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest. But it was no longer the all-consuming grief I had felt standing on that sidewalk. It was a scar, a reminder of a battle I had fought and won. He had tried to erase me, to make me feel small and worthless. But he had failed. I was still here. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly, completely free. He hadn't broken me. He had made me stronger. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that my life was just beginning. I stopped giving warnings to people who hurt me. I learned that day that some people only understand consequences when they are delivered directly to their front door. They finally learned what it feels like to be small, and I learned how to stand tall on my own. The initial shock of finding my life on the curb had been so profound, it had felt like the world was ending. But as I settled into my new life, I began to see it differently. It was not an ending. It was a violent, messy, and ultimately necessary beginning. The first week in my new apartment was quiet. I had bought only the essentials: a bed, a small table, a few chairs. The emptiness didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. It was a blank canvas. Sarah came over almost every day, bringing food, wine, and a steady supply of bad movies. Her presence was a constant comfort. "How are you really?" she asked one night, as we sat on the floor of my mostly empty living room, eating pizza out of the box. I had to think about it for a moment. "I'm okay," I said, and I was surprised to find that it was true. "I'm angry still, but it's a different kind of anger now. It's not the hot, panicky kind. It's cold. It's fuel." "Fuel for what?" she asked. "For this," I said, gesturing around the apartment. "For building something new. Something that's just mine. Something no one can take away from me and dump on a sidewalk." Sarah smiled. "I'll drink to that." A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." "It's Mark." My stomach lurched. I had blocked his number, but he must have gotten a new one or used a friend's phone. I ignored it. A few minutes later, another text came through. "Clara, please. I just want to explain." I showed the text to Sarah. "What do you think he wants to explain?" she asked, rolling her eyes. "That he's a sociopath? We already knew that." "I don't know," I said. "Part of me is curious." "Don't do it," she warned. "He's just going to try to manipulate you." He'll say he's sorry, that he made a mistake, that he misses you. He'll try to make you feel sorry for him. I knew she was right. But the part of me that had loved him for 3 years, the part of me that still couldn't fully comprehend how he could have done what he did, wanted to hear what he had to say. Not because I wanted to get back with him. That was impossible. But because I wanted to understand. So, against Sarah's advice, I agreed to meet him. I chose the location. A busy coffee shop in a neutral neighborhood, halfway between my new place and his. I told him he had 10 minutes. He was already there when I arrived. He looked terrible. His eyes were red-rimmed, and he had lost weight. His expensive suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt. He looked smaller somehow, less confident.
He stood up when he saw me.
Clara, thank you for coming. I didn't sit down. I stood by the table, my arms crossed. You have 10 minutes. He swallowed hard. I know I don't deserve it, but I wanted to say I'm sorry, he began. What I did was unforgivable. It was cruel and cowardly. I was in a bad place. I felt trapped. Trapped. I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. You felt trapped?
You could have talked to me, Mark.
You could have broken up with me like a normal human being. You didn't have to humiliate me. You didn't have to have a stranger throw my grandmother's chair on the street. I know, he said, running a hand through his messy hair. There's no excuse. I panicked. Tiffany, she was offering me this whole new life, this world I always wanted to be a part of. And I was afraid. I was afraid to face you. I was afraid of the fight, of the tears. So I took the easy way out. The easy way out? I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. You call that easy? It was the most complicated, destructive, and sociopathic breakup in history. You didn't just break up with me. You tried to erase me. He flinched. That's not what I was trying to do. Then what were you trying to do? I demanded. What was the plan? Did you think I just wouldn't come back? That I'd see my life on the curb and just disappear? I don't know what I was thinking, he mumbled, looking down at the table. I wasn't thinking clearly. Once I started down that path, with Tiffany, with the new apartment, it was like a snowball. I couldn't stop it. And throwing the stuff out, that was the landlord's idea. He said it would be faster. He offered the new tenant a deal. It just happened. He was still making excuses. Still trying to shift the blame. The landlord's idea. It just happened. He was incapable of taking full responsibility. The flicker of curiosity I had felt died, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. Sarah was right. He wasn't here for me. He was here for himself. He was here to ease his own guilt. Your 10 minutes are up, I said, turning to leave. Wait, he said, grabbing my arm. I pulled it away like I had been burned. Don't touch me, I said, my voice low and dangerous. He recoiled. I want to know if there's any chance for us to, to fix this. I stared at him. I stared at him for a long, silent moment, letting the absurdity of his question hang in the air between us. Did he really think that was possible? Did he really think an apology in a coffee shop could undo the profound violation of what he had done? Fix this. I finally said, my voice eerily calm. Mark, you didn't just break a plate. You burned down the whole house. There is nothing to fix. There is no us. There is just you and there is me. And I want nothing to do with you. Ever again. I saw the hope drain from his face, replaced by a look of pure desperation. But I love you, he whispered. The words were so pathetic, so transparently false, that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. No, you don't, I said. You don't know the first thing about love. You love the idea of being loved. You love what I did for you. But you don't love me. If you did, you never would have been able to look me in the eye for 2 weeks, telling me you missed me, while you were planning to throw me away like a piece of garbage. I didn't wait for a response. I turned and walked out of the coffee shop, my head held high. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew what I would see. A small, Pathetic man who had destroyed the best thing in his life for the promise of something shiny and new, only to find himself left with nothing at all. As I walked down the street, my phone buzzed. It was another text from him.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Please don't hate me. I stopped, deleted the text, and then blocked the new number. I took a deep breath of the cool, crisp air. The conversation hadn't given me the understanding I thought I wanted. But it had given me something better. Confirmation. Confirmation that I had made the right choice. Confirmation that he was not the man I thought he was. Confirmation that my future was so much brighter without him in it. Life began to settle into a new, pleasant rhythm. I loved my little apartment. I loved the freedom of making all my own decisions, of not having to compromise on what to watch on TV or what to have for dinner. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my relationship with Mark. I started taking a pottery class, something I had always wanted to do. My hands, which had been scraped and bruised from moving furniture, were now covered in clay. I was making things, creating things. It felt good. About a month after the coffee shop meeting, I ran into Emily, Mark's sister, at the grocery store. She looked embarrassed to see me, but I gave her a warm smile. "It's good to see you," I said, and I meant it. "You too," she said, relaxing a little. "How are you doing?" "I'm doing really well," I said. "I'm happy." "I'm so glad to hear that," she said. "You deserve it." She hesitated for a moment, then said, "Mark, he's not doing so well." I tried to keep my expression neutral. "Oh, he lost the condo," she said. "He couldn't afford it on his own. Tiffany was paying for half of it. He had to break the lease, pay a huge penalty. He's living back at home with my parents now." I pictured him, back in his childhood bedroom, surrounded by his high school trophies, under the thumb of his adoring mother. It was a pathetic image. "And his job," Emily continued, lowering her voice. "Something happened there, too. I don't know the details, but I think Tiffany's father has some connection to his company. He got laid off last week." I felt a jolt of something that wasn't quite pleasure, but wasn't entirely not pleasure either. It was a sense of cosmic justice. He had wanted a fancy new life, a step up in the world. He had used Tiffany to get it. And when his true character was revealed, that world had spit him out. "He blames you, you know," Emily said quietly. "He tells everyone you ruined his life." I thought about that for a moment. "Maybe I did," I said. "Maybe his life of lies and manipulation deserved to be ruined. Maybe I just held up a mirror and he didn't like what he saw." Emily nodded. "I think you're right." We said our goodbyes. As I pushed my cart down the aisle, I felt a final sense of peace. His downfall was not my victory. My victory was my own happiness, my own strength, my own new life. His misery was just a side effect, a natural consequence of his own terrible choices. That evening, I had dinner with Sarah. I told her about running into Emily and the news about Mark. She raised her wine glass. "To karma," she said. "She may be slow, but she always sends a bill." We clinked our glasses together. I looked around my cozy, beautifully decorated apartment. I had filled it with things I loved, things that made me happy. A new rug, colorful pillows, art from local artists. And in the corner, my grandmother's rocking chair stood, a silent testament to my resilience. The story of what I had done had become a bit of a legend among my friends. They called it the Great Furniture Return. They told it with a mixture of awe and laughter. For me, it was more than just a good story. It was the moment I took back my power. It was the moment I stopped being a victim and became the architect of my own life. I never heard from Mark again. I never wanted to. He was a chapter of my life that was now closed, a book that I had put back on the shelf for good. Sometimes, when the rain falls, I think of my furniture on that curb, wet and abandoned, and I don't feel shame or sadness. I feel a surge of pride. I see a woman who, faced with the worst kind of betrayal, didn't just cry. She got a U-Haul. She took what was hers, and she delivered a consequence that he would never forget. And then, she drove away, toward a future that was brighter and better than anything she had left behind. The process of rebuilding was slow, but steady. The check from Mark covered the basics, but furnishing an entire apartment from scratch was a challenge. I became an expert at finding bargains on secondhand websites and at thrift stores. Each piece I brought into my home felt like a victory. A mid-century modern coffee table I found for a steal. A set of mismatched but charming dining chairs. A bookshelf I sanded and repainted myself. Unlike the furniture I had shared with Mark, which had been a series of compromises, this was all me.
My taste, my choices. My home.
One afternoon, while I was at my pottery class, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I was tempted to ignore it, remembering Mark's attempts to contact me, but it was a local number, so I answered. "Hello. Is this Clara?" a woman's voice asked. It sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Yes, who is this?" "It's Carol," the voice said. "Mark's mother." I froze, my hands still covered in wet clay. A wave of cold dread washed over me. I hadn't spoken to her since before my trip. I couldn't imagine she was calling to wish me well. "What do you want, Carol?" I asked, my voice flat. "I think you know what I want," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "I want to know what you think you're doing, ruining my son's life." I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. I would not let this woman get to me. I didn't ruin his life, Carol. He did that all by himself. "Don't you play innocent with me," she snapped. "He told me everything. How you harassed him at his new home. How you made a scene and got his girlfriend to turn against him. How you got him fired from his job. You are a vindictive, spiteful little girl." I almost laughed. The narrative he had spun for his mother was so twisted, so self-serving, it was almost impressive. "Let me get this straight," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Your son, a grown man, threw all of my belongings on the street while I was out of the country. He moved in with another woman without so much as a text message to end our 3-year relationship. And you think I'm the villain in this story?" "He was trying to move on," she shrieked. "He found someone better, someone who could appreciate him. And you couldn't stand it. You had to destroy his happiness. His happiness was built on a foundation of lies and cruelty, Carol. It was bound to collapse. I just gave it a little push." "You are a horrible person," she spat. "I always knew there was something wrong with you. I told Mark from the beginning that you weren't good enough for him." "Well," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "It seems he finally took your advice. And look where it got him. Back in his childhood bedroom, unemployed and single. You must be so proud." There was a sputtering, incoherent rage on the other end of the line. I didn't wait to hear the rest of it. I hung up. I blocked the number. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The audacity of that woman, to call me and blame me for the consequences of her son's despicable actions. It was infuriating.
But it was also clarifying.
It showed me exactly the kind of environment that had produced a man like Mark. An environment where he was never held accountable, where his every selfish whim was justified and defended. I went back to my pottery wheel. I took a lump of clay and slammed it down. I centered it, my hands moving with a new, fierce energy. I would not let them get to me. I would not let their toxicity poison my new life. I would take all that negative energy, all that anger, and I would turn it into something beautiful, something strong, something that was all mine. The next time I saw Sarah, I told her about the call from Carol. She shook her head in disgust. "The apple doesn't fall far from the toxic tree, does it?" "Apparently not," I said. "But you know what? It doesn't even matter anymore. They're not my problem. They're a story I can tell at parties. That's all." And it was true. The more time that passed, the more distant the whole saga became. It was like a movie I had watched, a book I had read. It was dramatic and painful, but it wasn't my reality anymore. My reality was my sunny apartment, my fulfilling new hobbies, my supportive friends. One weekend, I decided to host a housewarming party. It was the first time I had entertained in my new place. I was a little nervous but excited. I spent the whole day cooking and cleaning. As my friends started to arrive, filling my apartment with laughter and conversation. I felt a wave of pure happiness wash over me. Sarah arrived with a large, awkwardly wrapped gift. "What is this?" I asked, laughing. "A housewarming present, obviously," she said. I tore off the paper. It was a framed poster. On it, in big, bold letters, it said, "Some women fear the fire. Some women simply become it." Below the quote was a stylized drawing of a U-Haul truck. I burst out laughing. "This is perfect," I said, giving her a huge hug. "Absolutely perfect." I hung it in the hallway, right by the front door. It was the first thing people saw when they came in and the last thing they saw when they left. It was a statement. It was a reminder. Later that evening, a friend of a friend, a man named David I had never met before, was admiring the poster. "That's quite a statement piece," he said with a smile.
"It's a long story," I said.
"I've got time," he replied. And so, for the first time, I told the whole story to a stranger. I told him about the vacation, the curb, the U-Haul, the confrontation. I told it not with anger or bitterness, but with a sense of humor and a touch of pride. He listened, his eyes wide, completely engrossed. When I finished, he was silent for a moment. Then he said, "Wow, that is the most incredible story I have ever heard. You are a legend." I felt myself blush. "I don't know about that. I just did what I had to do." "No," he said, his expression serious. "A lot of people would have just cried and called their mom. You took action. You stood up for yourself. That's amazing." We talked for the rest of the night. He was smart and funny and kind. He was also a good listener. When he left, he asked for my number. I gave it to him without hesitation. A few days later, he called and asked me out on a date. We went to a little Italian restaurant. The conversation was easy and natural. He asked me about my pottery, and I asked him about his work as a landscape architect. There were no red flags, no moments of unease. It was just nice. As we were walking home, he said, "You know, I was thinking about your story, the one about your ex." I braced myself, wondering what was coming next. "I just want you to know," he said, "that I would never do that to you. I can't even imagine being that kind of person. I value my belongings way too much to just throw them on the street." He said it with a light-hearted, joking tone, but I could hear the sincerity underneath. It was his way of telling me that he was different, that he was safe. I smiled. "That's good to know." We continued to see each other. It was slow and easy and felt completely different from my relationship with Mark. With Mark, it had been a whirlwind, intense, passionate, and ultimately destructive. With David, it was a slow burn. It was built on a foundation of respect and kindness and genuine admiration. One evening, we were sitting on my couch, watching a movie. I looked over at him, and he was looking at my grandmother's rocking chair. "That's a beautiful chair," he said. "It's my favorite thing I own," I said. "It's been through a lot." "I can imagine," he said, his eyes meeting mine. "It's a survivor, just like its owner." In that moment, I knew that I was completely, finally, healed. The wounds that Mark had inflicted were no longer open and raw. They were scars, yes, but they were scars that told a story of strength, a story of survival, a story of a woman who, when her world was turned upside down, rented a U-Haul and took back control of her own narrative. The past didn't define me anymore. It had shaped me, it had made me stronger, but it did not define me. My future was a blank page, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what I would write on it. And I knew, with a deep and abiding certainty, that it would be a story of my own making. And it would be a story with a very, very happy ending. My relationship with David blossomed. It was a quiet, sturdy kind of love, built on shared laughter and mutual respect. He never tried to change me or diminish me. He celebrated my strength, the very quality that had intimidated Mark. He loved the story of the U-Haul, not just for its drama, but for what it said about my character. "You don't take nonsense from anyone," he'd say with a grin. "It's one of my favorite things about you." A year after the incident, David and I decided to move in together. The conversation was easy and natural, the complete opposite of the tense, unspoken assumptions that had governed my life with Mark. We looked at apartments together, a real partnership. We found a beautiful place with a small balcony, perfect for the plants David loved to cultivate. Packing up my little apartment was an emotional experience. It had been my sanctuary, the place where I had healed and rebuilt myself. As I packed my books and my pottery, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for the home it had been. When it came time to move my grandmother's rocking chair, David lifted it with a gentle reverence that made my heart ache in the best possible way. "We'll find the perfect spot for this," he said, understanding its importance without me having to say a word. As we were carrying the last box out to the moving truck, a professional one this time, no U-Hauls needed, my old landlord from the building I had shared with Mark happened to be walking by. He saw me and did a double take. "Clara, I haven't seen you in ages," he said, with a nervous smile. "Hello, Mr. Henderson," I said, my tone polite but cool. "Moving again, I see," he said, eyeing the truck. "Moving in with my boyfriend," I said, gesturing to David, who gave the landlord a curt nod. "That's nice," Mr. Henderson said, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He was clearly uncomfortable. "Listen, about what happened last year. I just want you to know, I feel bad about it. The way your ex handled things. It wasn't right. I shouldn't have gotten involved." I looked at him. He was a man who valued convenience over conscience. He had been complicit in my humiliation because it was the easiest option for him. I could have told him off. I could have reminded him of his role in my pain. But as I looked at him, a sweaty, nervous man on a sunny afternoon, I felt nothing but a distant pity. He was a small man, and my life was now so big. "It's in the past," I said simply. "I've moved on." His relief was palpable. "Well, that's good to hear. Good luck with the move." He scurried away, and David put his arm around me. "You're a class act, you know that." "He's not worth my energy," I said, and I realized it was true. My anger, which had been a powerful engine for change, had served its purpose. Now all I felt was peace. Life with David was good. We built a home together, filled with his plants and my pottery. The rocking chair sat in a sunny corner of our living room, a quiet sentinel. My career was thriving. My friendships were strong. I was happy. One day, I got a Facebook message request. It was from Tiffany. I was so surprised I almost deleted it without opening it. But curiosity got the better of me. Her message was short and to the point. "Hi Clara, you don't know me, but I was the other woman in the situation with Mark last year. I just wanted to reach out and apologize for my role in what happened. I was naive, and I believed his lies. I'm so sorry for the pain he caused you. I also wanted to thank you. You opened my eyes to his true character. That day in the condo was a wake-up call I desperately needed. I hope you are happy and doing well. All the best, Tiffany." I sat with the message for a long time. It was an unexpected and graceful gesture. She didn't have to do that. She could have just disappeared and forgotten the whole ugly mess. But she had chosen to reach out, to acknowledge my pain and her unwitting role in it. I wrote back to her. "Hi Tiffany, thank you so much for your message. It means a lot to me. I don't blame you for what happened. You were a victim of his lies, just like I was. I'm glad you got away from him. I am doing very well now, and I wish you all the best too. Sincerely, Clara." It felt like the final loose end being tied up. A moment of solidarity with a woman who could have been my enemy but was instead just another person who had been deceived by a manipulative man. A few months later, on the 2-year anniversary of the great furniture return, Sarah, David, and I were out to dinner. "To the day you became a legend," Sarah said, raising her glass. We all laughed and clinked glasses. "You know," I said thoughtfully, "I was thinking about Mark the other day. For the first time in a long time." David looked at me, his expression open and curious, not jealous. "What about him?" "I was just wondering what he's doing now. Not because I care, but just as a human story. What happens to someone like that? Sarah, who always had the gossip, leaned in. Oh, I can tell you. My cousin works with his sister, Emily. Apparently, he's still living with his parents. He's working some dead-end telemarketing job. He's gained a lot of weight. And he's bitter. He blames everyone but himself for his problems. The world is unfair. Women are crazy. You know the type. I pictured him, a man of 32, living in his parents' basement, railing against the world that had so cruelly wronged him. The man who had been so desperate to project an image of success and power was now the very picture of failure. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel sad. I felt nothing at all. He was a ghost from a past life, a cautionary tale. His fate was his own to bear. Well, I said, taking a sip of my wine. That's a shame. David squeezed my hand under the table. He knew I didn't mean it. He knew that what I was really saying was that justice had been served. Not the fiery, dramatic justice of a U-Haul delivery, but the quiet, slow, and inevitable justice of character. He had built his life on a rotten foundation, and it had crumbled into dust. I had built mine on a foundation of strength, integrity, and self-respect. And it was solid as a rock. We finished our dinner, talking and laughing about the future. About the garden David wanted to plant on our balcony. About the trip we were planning to Italy. About the life we were building together, a life of kindness and partnership and joy. As we walked home, hand in hand, under the streetlights, I thought about the woman I had been 2 years ago, standing on a rainy sidewalk, surrounded by the ruins of her life. I wished I could go back and tell her that it would all be okay, that the pain would fade, that she was stronger than she knew, that one day she would look back on this moment not as the end of her world, but as the day her real life began. But I didn't need to tell her. She had figured it out on her own. She had gotten in the truck and driven herself toward a better future. And she had arrived. She was home. My life continued to move forward in wonderful, ordinary ways. David and I adopted a dog, a scruffy terrier mix we named Buster. My pottery business took off, and I was able to quit my day job to focus on my art full-time. Our home was filled with love, laughter, and the happy chaos of a life well lived. The story of Mark became a distant echo. It was no longer a source of pain, or even anger. It was simply a part of my history, a testament to the fact that endings are often just beginnings in disguise. Then, one day, the past showed up on my doorstep. Literally. I was working in my home studio, my hands covered in clay, when the doorbell rang. Buster started barking. I wiped my hands on my apron and went to the door, expecting a package delivery. When I opened the door, my heart stopped. It was Mark. He looked old. Not just older, but worn down. The confidence and swagger he used to carry himself with were gone, replaced by a deep-seated weariness. He was heavier, his clothes were ill-fitting, and his eyes had a desperate, haunted look. "Clara," he said, his voice raspy. I was so shocked, I couldn't speak. I just stared at him. What was he doing here? How had he even found me? "How did you get this address?" I finally managed to ask, my voice cold. "I asked my sister," he said. "Emily. She didn't want to give it to me, but I begged her. I told her it was important." "I can't imagine what could be so important that it requires you showing up at my home unannounced," I said, my hand tightening on the doorknob. I made no move to invite him in. He seemed to shrink under my gaze. I know I have no right. But I had to see you. I had to talk to you. We've already talked, Mark. A long time ago. I have nothing left to say to you. Please," he said, and the desperation in his voice was raw. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Then I'll go, and I'll never bother you again. I promise." Part of me, the part that had learned to set firm boundaries, wanted to slam the door in his face. But another part of me, the part that saw the pathetic, broken man in front of me, felt a flicker of morbid curiosity. What could he possibly have to say after all this time? 5 minutes, I said, my voice hard. "And you stay on the porch." He nodded eagerly. "Of course. Thank you." He took a deep breath, as if gathering his courage. "I came here to apologize," he said. "For real, this time. Not like that time in the coffee shop." I was still making excuses then. I was still trying to save myself. But I've had a lot of time to think. Years of it. And I finally understand. I finally see what I did. I waited, my expression unmoved. "I was a coward," he said, his voice cracking. "I was a weak, selfish, and cruel person. What I did to you, it was monstrous. There is no excuse for it.
No justification.
I destroyed something good because I was too afraid to be a man and face my own problems. I took my insecurities out on you, and I tried to break you because I was already broken." He looked down at his shoes.
I see that now.
"I've lost everything, Clara. My job, my home, my self-respect. And I deserve it. I deserve all of it. The universe gave me a good person, a good life, and I threw it away for nothing. For a fantasy that wasn't even real." He looked up at me, and his eyes were filled with tears. "I'm not here to ask for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that. I'm just here to say that I am sorry. I am so deeply, profoundly sorry for the pain I caused you. And I'm glad. I'm glad you're happy. I see your pottery page online sometimes. You're so talented. You've built such a beautiful life for yourself. You deserve it." I was stunned into silence. This was not the man I had known. The man I had known was incapable of this kind of self-awareness, this kind of genuine remorse. The years of failure and isolation had clearly forced him to confront the person he truly was. "Thank you for the apology, Mark," I said finally, my voice softer than I intended. "That's all I wanted to say," he said, wiping his eyes. "I just needed you to hear it. I'll go now." He turned to leave, but then he hesitated. He looked back at me.
"There's one more thing," he said.
"My mom. She's sick. Really sick. And she asked me to apologize to you too. She knows she was wrong.
She knows she enabled me.
She regrets it." The news about Carol surprised me more than anything. I pictured the fierce, defensive woman who had screamed at me over the phone, and I couldn't imagine her ever admitting fault. It seemed that life had delivered its hard lessons to her as well. "I'm sorry to hear she's sick," I said.
And I meant it.
"Yeah," he said, his voice thick.
"Well.
Goodbye, Clara." He walked down the path and got into a beat-up old car that was parked down the street. I watched him drive away until the car was out of sight. I closed the door and leaned against it, my mind reeling. David came out of the kitchen, a worried look on his face. Buster was at his heels.
"Who is that?" he asked.
"You look like you've seen a ghost." "I have," I said. It was Mark. I told him everything that had been said. He listened patiently, his arm around me. "Wow," he said when I was finished. "That's the lot." "Yeah," I said. "It is. How do you feel?" he asked. I thought about it. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt a quiet sense of closure. The final page of the book had been turned. The story was well and truly over. "I feel free," I said. That night, as David and I were getting ready for bed, he turned to me. "You know," he said, "I'm glad he came." I looked at him, surprised. "Really?"
"Why?"
"Because," he said, "it proves that what you did wasn't just about revenge. It was about consequences. You held him accountable for his actions. You forced him to look in the mirror. And it may have taken years, but it finally worked. You didn't just get even. You might have actually made him a better person." I had never thought of it that way before. I had always seen my actions as a necessary act of self-preservation and justice. But maybe David was right. Maybe, in a strange and unexpected way, my act of defiance had been a catalyst for his redemption. Not for my sake, but for his. I snuggled closer to him. Buster curled up at the foot of our bed. I looked around our peaceful, happy home. I thought about the man Mark had been, and the man he had become. And I thought about the woman I had been and the woman I had become.
We had both been changed by that day.
He had been brought low, forced to confront his own ugliness. and I had been forced to discover a strength I never knew I had. Our paths had diverged so dramatically since then. His had led down into a valley of regret, while mine had climbed to a sunlit peak. I closed my eyes, filled with a profound sense of peace. The past was finally, completely, at rest. And the future, my beautiful, hard-won future, was waiting.
And it was all mine.
A few weeks after Mark's visit, I received a small, plain envelope in the mail. There was no return address. Inside was a handwritten card. The handwriting was shaky and frail. "Dear Clara," it began. "I don't know if you will read this, but I hope you do. This is Carol. My son Mark told me he spoke to you. He told me you were kind. You didn't have to be. I am writing to you from my bed. The doctors say I don't have much time left. And as I lie here, I think about my life and the things I regret. And one of my biggest regrets is how I treated you." My breath caught in my throat. I sat down in my grandmother's rocking chair to read the rest. "I was not a good mother to Mark," she wrote. "I loved him too much, and not in the right way. I spoiled him. I made him believe he was the center of the universe. I taught him that he never had to be accountable for his actions, because I would always be there to clean up his messes and make excuses for him. I saw how good you were for him. You challenged him. You made him want to be better. And it scared me. I was afraid of losing him, so I pushed you away. I was cruel to you, and I am so sorry." Tears welled in my eyes as I read her words. This was a confession I had never expected, a validation I never knew I needed. "What he did to you was a terrible, unforgivable thing," the letter continued. "It was the culmination of a lifetime of my own mistakes as a parent. When he came home, defeated and alone, I finally saw the monster I had created. And it broke my heart. I know it is too late to change the past, but I wanted you to know that in the end, I saw the truth. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive an old woman's foolishness. I wish you nothing but the happiness you so richly deserve. Sincerely, Carol." I folded the letter and held it to my chest. I cried. I cried for the pain she had caused and for the pain she was now in. I cried for the broken little boy she had raised into a broken man. And I cried with a sense of profound, complicated release. Forgiveness wasn't a gift I was giving her. It was a gift I was giving myself. It was the final step in letting go of the weight of the past. I never replied to the letter. I didn't need to. Her words were enough. A month later, I saw in the online obituaries that she had passed away. I felt a pang of sadness, not for the woman who had been my tormentor, but for the woman who, at the end of her life, had found the courage to face the truth. Life moved on, as it always does. David and I got married in a small ceremony in our backyard, surrounded by our friends, our family, and his beautiful plants. Sarah was my maid of honor. She gave a toast that was both hilarious and deeply moving, and of course it included a reference to a U-Haul. We built a life that was quiet and happy and full. We traveled. We worked on our garden. We filled our home with art and books and love. The rocking chair, my faithful companion through all the turmoil, now sat in the nursery, waiting for our first child. Sometimes, new friends would hear the story of Mark and the furniture, and they would look at me with awe. "I can't believe you did that," they would say. "You're so tough." And I would smile, because they were right. I was tough.
But I was also soft.
I was a creator of beautiful things. I was a loving wife. I was a loyal friend. The U-Haul incident didn't define me, but it had revealed a part of me that had been dormant. It had taught me that I had a core of steel. It had taught me that I could face the worst of betrayals and not only survive, but thrive. He had tried to throw me away. He had tried to reduce my life to a pile of junk on a curb. But he had failed, because my life wasn't in my things. It was in me, in my heart, in my spirit, in my resilience. And that was something no one could ever take away. Sitting in the quiet of the nursery, gently rocking in my grandmother's chair, I felt a deep and abiding sense of peace. The storm was long over. The wreckage had been cleared away. And in its place, something new and beautiful had grown. A life that was stronger and richer and more joyful than I could have ever imagined. I had come home, not just to an apartment, but to myself. And I was finally truly happy. I had learned that my value wasn't tied to a person or a place. It was inherent. I was the architect of my own happiness, and I had built it to last. The foundation was solid, the walls were strong, and the view from the window was beautiful.